Nashville, Tennessee, known to many as the Music City, home of neon lights, country stars, and buzzing nightlife. But beneath its glittering surface, the city has long struggled with violent crime. And on August 25, 2025, that darker side came to light once again when a confrontation over infidelity ended in tragedy. The victim was 42-year-old Keiona Wilson, a wife and mother who, by all appearances, lived a happy life with her husband, Amadeo Wilson. On social media, their posts painted the picture of a loving marriage. They celebrated anniversaries, birthdays, and milestones with words of affection. But behind closed doors, cracks had begun to form. Amadeo was cheating, and Keiona knew it. The woman at the center of the affair was Keosha Greer, a convicted felon with a criminal past. Keiona, frustrated and desperate to protect her marriage, decided to confront Greer directly. The events of August 25, 2025. That morning, Keiona drove to Scalf Drive in Madison, an area of Nashville believed to be Greer's residence. Using her husband's key, she moved his vehicle to the front of the house, signaling her presence. Keiona then knocked on the door. Surveillance footage later revealed a heated exchange through the home's intercom system as Greer refused to come outside. The verbal confrontation escalated, and Keiona attempted to force her way inside. Greer responded with violence. She fired a gunshot through the storm door, a warning shot that missed Keiona. Undeterred, Keiona pushed inside and the two women began fighting. During the struggle, Greer fired again. This time, the bullet struck Keiona in the abdomen. Wounded but still conscious, Keiona managed to flee the house. She got into her husband's car and drove a short distance before flagging down an officer outside the Madison Police Precinct. Officers immediately called for medical assistance, and Keiona was rushed to Skyline Medical Center. Despite efforts to save her, she succumbed to her injuries later that day. Police quickly identified the shooter as Keosha Greer. While she claimed she acted in self-defense against an intruder, the case raised legal complications. As a convicted felon, Greer was prohibited from possessing a firearm. Authorities confirmed that no charges were immediately filed for the shooting itself, pending further investigation. However, Greer was arrested on charges of felon in possession of a weapon. Detectives stated that surveillance footage and witness statements would determine whether additional charges, possibly homicide, would follow. News of Keiona's death spread quickly across Nashville. Friends and family filled social media timelines with tributes and disbelief. Many expressed sorrow, not only at her loss, but also at the circumstances that led her to confront her husband's mistress. Commentators and community members were quick to point out the dangers of such confrontations. Some stressed that the real responsibility lay with Amadeo, whose infidelity set off a chain of events that ended with his wife's death. Others condemned Greer for resorting to deadly force, especially given her criminal record. Keiona Wilson's death underscores the volatile mix of infidelity, anger, and violence. What began as a marriage unraveling behind closed doors escalated into a deadly clash between wife and mistress. The tragedy highlights a broader issue. When disputes rooted in betrayal cross into violence, the outcome is rarely justifiable and often permanent. As of now, Keiona's family mourns her loss, while investigators determine whether Greer will face homicide charges. One thing is certain. The confrontation on Scalf Drive has left behind shattered families, unanswered questions, and a painful reminder of how quickly domestic conflict can turn fatal. Here's my analysis of the story. 1. The human side of the tragedy. Keiona Wilson was a woman who wanted to protect her marriage. Her decision to confront her husband's mistress was rooted in emotional pain and betrayal. Like many victims of infidelity, she acted out of desperation rather than logic. Unfortunately, her attempt to settled things directly, escalated into violence she could not have foreseen. She likely underestimated the risk posed by Keosha Greer, who had a criminal history and no hesitation in using a gun. 2. The role of infidelity. At the core of this tragedy lies Madison Wilson's infidelity. His actions triggered a volatile situation where two women felt they were fighting for control, love, and respect. Cheating often creates cycles of anger, humiliation, and confrontation, not only between partners but also between spouses and third parties. This case highlights how betrayal can spiral into deadly consequences when emotions override rational thinking. 3. Keosha Greer's criminal background. Greer was a convicted felon. By law, she was not allowed to own or use a firearm, yet she had one and used it. Her criminal past showed a pattern of unlawful behavior, and this shooting fit that pattern. Even though she may claim self-defense, her possession of a weapon was already illegal. This complicates her case and raises accountability questions. 4. The legal dilemma. Self-defense versus homicide. From a legal standpoint, Greer might argue she was defending her home from an intruder. Keiona forced entry. However, Keiona was unarmed, which weakens the claim of proportional self-defense. The fact that Greer is a felon in possession of a firearm adds another layer of criminal liability. Police initially hesitated to file homicide charges, showing how domestic conflict shootings often fall into legal gray areas. Was it a break-in confrontation or an avoidable escalation? The social commentary. Domestic violence and infidelity, this is not just a crime of passion. It reflects broader issues of broken trust, betrayal, and emotional trauma. Women confronting mistresses. Sadly, stories like this are common. Instead of holding the cheating partner accountable, many women direct their anger at the other woman. That choice often leads to dangerous outcomes, as we see here. Guns and felons. The fact that Greer, a felon, had access to a gun highlights gaps in enforcement. If the law had prevented her access, Keiona might still be alive. The preventable factors. This tragedy could have been prevented at multiple points. If Amadeo had not been unfaithful, the confrontation never happens. If Keiona had chosen a different route, separation, counseling, or legal action, instead of showing up at Greer's home, she might still be alive. If Greer had not had a firearm, the fight may have remained physical, but not fatal. The aftermath. Keiona's family is left grieving, and her death becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of confronting affairs violently. Greer faces charges, not only for possessing a weapon as a felon, but potentially for homicide, depending on how prosecutors classify the shooting. Amadeo walks away alive, but guilty of betrayal, indirectly responsible for the conflict that spiraled out of control. This case is a domestic conflict turned fatal, a mix of betrayal, emotional desperation, and unlawful violence. It shows how infidelity doesn't just break hearts, it can destroy lives when anger and confrontation take the place of reason.